As someone who's used Procreate for years, I recently made the switch to Adobe Fresco and have not looked back. Adobe Fresco is an incredibly simple yet powerful app that is great for beginners or professional artists. In my opinion, the benefits of this app far outweigh something like Procreate. I'll keep the detailed comparison between Adobe Fresco and Procreate to another video, but I do want to go over 3 quick reasons why I think Fresco, in my opinion, is better than Procreate. Number 1, it's free. If you want to pay to access additional brush sets or increase your Adobe Creative Cloud storage, you can always upgrade for $9.99 per year. That's less than 84 cents per month, or a little bit less than 3 pennies a day. That's a hell of a bargain. Number 2 is that it syncs with Adobe Creative Cloud and it syncs across multiple different devices. So I can start a project on my iPad Pro, move that to my iPad Mini, move that to my iPhone, and then move that back to my desktop. That's something that you just don't get with Procreate, unfortunately. Having the flexibility to take your digital art studio with you wherever you go across multiple different devices is a very important factor for me personally, and I feel like that flexibility is beneficial for, frankly, any artist, whether you're just a hobbyist or professional. Number 3, and honestly, the funnest of what's my favorite in Fresco, is that you get to add motion to your artwork. This isn't full-blown animation software as you would typically think of animation software. Yes, you can animate in Procreate, but you're limited to frame-by-frame animation, which means you literally have to draw every single picture within your animation scene. So think of this as the old school flipbook styles where every single page has a progression of the art. And as you're flipping through it, you get the motion. That's basically what you can do in Procreate. Now you can also do that in Fresco, but Fresco has really cool motion options available, which are unlike anything I've seen in another app. So again, it's not a full animation software, but you can animate your artwork, and Fresco makes it incredibly dynamic and just like super simple to do. If you have brush sets that are set up with Procreate, for example, those are not going to transfer over to Fresco. But let's say you're coming from something like Photoshop. Photoshop files are Fresco files, and so Photoshop brushes are also Fresco brushes. So that will transfer seamlessly, which is great. New programs can be super intimidating to learn, especially if you already have a workflow with your current program. So in this video, I'm going to demonstrate all of the tools within Adobe Fresco very briefly so that you can see each and every tool within Fresco. If you're a Fresco beginner, feel free to go on ahead right now and download the Fresco app so that you can work right alongside of me with your iPad. And if you're just curious to the Fresco features, but you're not yet sold on downloading the app, feel free to grab a coffee or a hot tea and join me. And of course, as you have questions or comments, please feel free to drop them down below, and hopefully you can help future viewers of this video. Okay, so it's time to get started, so I'll meet you at the iPad. First, I want to go over the menu options over here on the left side. So you have your home screen. What this is going to represent is pretty much all of your recent documentation. So any document that you've worked on in Fresco or in Photoshop, you're going to find all of your most recent artwork right here. Underneath home, you're going to have the Learn button, which this is really cool. So Adobe has done a really great job to create any type of live tutorials. You have hands-on tutorials, so you can sort of walk through with them and learn all the different features. Quick tips, live brushes, you've got motion, layers, pretty much anything that you're looking for, you can find it here. There's also a Discover tab. I don't really use this a lot, but I think this is for people that are streaming. You can tune in, I'm not really sure. So then working on down, you have your files, which is all of your recent files you have shared with you. So this is really neat. If you have a couple friends, you've got an artist group, and you're all utilizing Fresco, you can share work with them seamlessly. So if you wanted to, let's say, do a collaboration with an artist, this is where you can share your work directly with them and utilize sort of this collaborative space. It's really kind of neat. Then, of course, you have your deleted files. And so that pretty much covers the home screen when you immediately jump into Fresco. Okay, so let's go to create a new document. And you can see here under the start a new document, I have custom size and a couple of my sizes here. If you prefer to work with a typical size, let's say maybe it's a YouTube thumbnail, or right here for this 1080 1920, that's great for like Instagram Reels or YouTube Shorts or TikToks. You can create a screen size or resolution that you prefer to work in and save that as your own size. I just have it called my size, but you could title it whatever you wanted. So let's jump in here to this custom size really quickly. You can see here that there's recent sizes, saved, digital options, and then print options. All of your print options are going to stay at 300 ppi, which is 300 pixels per inch. It's going to give you the best printing quality if you do plan to print your work. So Adobe has done a great job of creating a lot of these standard sizes that you might be using. There's comic book, A4, you've got a large postcard, small postcard, poster, A3, A2, etc. On the digital side, they also do a really good job of giving you standard HD, full HD, 4K, 8K, and web illustrations. So if you don't know where to start, just jump in and pick one of the preset options. And so for this demonstration, we're just going to utilize this 1080 by 1920. And that's great for Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts, TikToks, etc. Okay, so the first thing that you're going to notice over here in Fresco on this left side, we're going to kind of work from the left side down, and then we'll move our way over to the right side. So over here on this left side, you're going to notice the main difference between Fresco and Procreate is these brushes. And this is really what sets Fresco apart from Procreate. Your first set of brushes are going to be your pixel brushes. These are going to range from literally anything. You can have basic brushes, charcoal, dry media, ink, lettering, painting, sketching, you name it. Fresco always defaults to the pencil. And so you're always going to have this default pencil when you click on your pixel brush. Okay. So you can kind of see that that's the pencil. If I use the tip of my pencil, or the tip of my Apple Pencil, it looks more like really hard, and it is pressure sensitive. So as I lighten up, and if we wanted to, let's say, do some form of shading with the side of the pencil, you know, we can kind of do that. So let's back out of that. And to back out of that, over here on the top of your screen, you have two arrows. You have one pointing back and one pointing forward. Your front is your redo button and your back is your undo button, okay? A common misconception with Fresco is that there's some sort of lag or delay, whereas like Procreate, the brushes are instantaneous. Like as soon as you're making brush strokes, they're laying down. So something that Fresco and Procreate do very, very differently is this smoothing. So if you look over here in this little wheel right here, you've got obviously your color wheel, which you can grab your colors, and then you have your brush size that you can adjust here. You also have your flow, so you can lower the opacity or the flow of your brush if you maybe don't want to push out as much ink. But then you have this little squiggle line, and this is called smoothing. So let's move over here. Let's use this brush with no smoothing. That's too big. Oh, if you'll notice, a quick shortcut to undo is instead of pushing your back arrow, you can just tap two fingers on your iPad and it will delete. Okay, let's do a pencil, for example. Let's have the smoothing all the way down on the pencil, and let's say hello. And then if we turn the smoothing all the way up, hello. You'll see that like these little strokes right in here and in here just kind of seem to smooth out a little bit. So it really helps when you're doing line work. And let's say that you want to draw something like well, I'm a little too far zoomed in, but let's say you want to draw something like super squiggly and you're having to trace like so. Oops. When you turn your smoothing all the way up, if you were to do like a similar line, why is this? it's just going to create a much smoother effect. So some people think that that's like actually delaying the brush. I don't necessarily notice a delay. You know, this is a feature that Procreate definitely does not have. It will not, Procreate will not allow you to smooth or adjust the smoothing while you're actually working. You can adjust brush settings in Procreate. I'm not trying to say that you can't. I just like the way that Fresco does it better. All right, so moving on. These are really cool. We're going to move on to the live brushes. So if you are an artist who works primarily with any kind of wet media traditionally, I'm talking acrylic brushes, watercolors, any type of wet media, even oil brushes, you can literally recreate your traditional media digitally. And I know this sounds crazy and you're not going to believe me, but hang in there because this is truly incredible and major differentiator between Fresco and Procreate. So let's dive into this really quickly. So let's say we just want to use a watercolor soft wash, okay? And let's go with maybe, I don't know, let's go with like a pretty red. So as I start to brush, you'll notice the media and I can kind of layer on top of it, right? So as I just hold down my brush, like, or my pencil, and kind of wiggle it about, you can see how it's acting just like a watercolor, which is really, really cool. I mean, the fact that they have done this, it's pretty remarkable. It's almost like it's activated, like you're pushing paint on the screen. It feels just like the real thing. It's pretty trippy. And then a cool thing that you can also do is this little circle thing right here. If you double tap that, it's your touch modifier. And you see over here in the right, this little blue icon popping up that says pure water. So let's say that I maybe made this blot like too dark or something and we didn't want to make it so dark. I can literally paint with just pure water. And I can also come in here. If I tap this little touch bar over here, if I tap the water button, I can change my water flow. You guys, this is unreal. Like, this is crazy that we have this at our disposal. You can have a full-blown art studio. The amount of tools available to you in this program is unfreaking believable. It's unreal. Okay, so we can change our water flow if we wanted, which is just super cool. And then if I want to go back to just painting with just paint, I just double tap that touch modifier and can do that. But let's say we want to like mix in maybe some blue or something. So as I mix in blue and layer it on top, you'll see that it almost like blends the colors like purple, which is naturally what blue and red create. So I'll show you over here in the corner. This is what the blue looks like just naturally. And then if I start sort of merging it in to this red, I'm getting this really beautiful, like deep magenta, almost like a fuchsia color. Stunning. If you're a traditional watercolorist, you've got to play around with this because this is so cool. I'm not a huge watercolor artist. I typically worked with acrylics, but this is pretty remarkable. Okay, so let's back out of the watercolors. And of course, to do that, you're going to touch your undo button. Let's get out of the watercolor and let's do some oils. So let's go with the oil paint round. So as I'm painting this is freaking crazy, you guys. As I'm painting this, you can see the thickness of the paint. Like, let's kind of zoom in here a little bit. Do you sort of see this, like, let me get, do you sort of see this right in here? Well, let's see. This right in here. The thickness of the paint, the oil paint. This is so cool how they did this. Okay, so what you can do is you can change your paint mix right here. You want 100% paint mix. You can make it a little bit thicker. You can also change your flow. So let's say that we wanted Like, let's move to a different part here. Let's say we didn't want to use that thick oil paint. Maybe we like to work in layers and we like to kind of build those layers with our painting. You can change your flow here so that you're just creating a super easy texture. And as you want to maybe lay down that first layer, and then let's say that you wanted possibly some yellow and make it a little bit thicker, you can kind of come in here and make it a little bit thicker. And again, with these live brushes, as you're laying down paint, you are blending the paint. So it's gonna stay a wet media. And you can see I'm over here in this left side, you can see that I have the yellow as my current color. And so this is it just without contamination from the blue. And as I'm pushing this into the blue, you can see that I'm creating this beautiful, like green, like blue-green color. And this is how you can make crazy, crazy palettes. And I have a completely separate video on blending colors and creating your own palette here in Fresco. So if that's something you're interested in, definitely check out the link in the description. We won't go too much into that in here because I could spend a lot of time just talking through these live brushes and these oil brushes. But it's really pretty remarkable what Fresco has done here. And if we wanted to cake it on really thick, we could do that. And you can just see just the texture here. We also can make the brushes bigger. And then of course we can change brushes. If we wanted like a short brush, maybe we wanted like a big sort of chunky brush, you know, you can change that as you need. Let's back out of those. Okay, I want to touch really quickly on something that's pretty fantastic back on the live brushes. So let's grab ourselves the oil paint round and let's paint with we don't want that big of a brush. Let's just paint here with some of this red. I think that red is really pretty. And this is what's pretty incredible with these live brushes. So here I have an oil paint, and now I'm gonna go with a basic watercolor, and I'm gonna pick this bright yellow. I can actually come in here with a watercolor. My yellow is my watercolor, my red is my oil, and blend watercolors and oils. This absolutely cannot happen in real life, which is just crazy. Like the fact that you can do this. And again, we can change our water flow and we can change the actual flow of the pigment. Like if we wanted it to be lighter, maybe that yellow, I call it loading the brush. Like maybe it's too loaded. It's got too much pigment and you want to slowly build your layers. You can start with a really soft pigment. Look at this, as I'm touching these live edges over here, it's just filling out. And especially up in here, as I'm working and just sort of twisting my brush, here, let me zoom in on this. You can see the colors just sort of mixing. And if I wanted to go back to my oil brush, I think it was just oil paint round. We're gonna grab our red. You know, I can blend right in with this watercolor and create this really beautiful orange, red orange. Like you cannot do this in real life. You cannot take oil paint and like mix it with water. It doesn't work like that. So this is what makes Fresco truly magical, and the options are absolutely unlimited as an artist. And even if you don't consider yourself an artist, maybe you're just crafty and you just like to sort of like putz around on these different programs and you like to push yourself and you like to learn. And this is so much fun to go in here and play with this. It's so much fun. Yeah, just absolutely freaking incredible. Another thing worth mentioning, when you do have your live brushes pulled up, you get a feature down here that you don't necessarily get when you're working with a pixel brush. So in a pixel brush, if you go over here to your brush settings, you can kind of see, I mean, you can, this is a little bit more advanced for beginners, but you can really play with like the pressure and the shape dynamics and the pretty much build your own brush if you wanted. But in the live brush, the you'll notice a few things change here, and you have different textures. So you can have canvas texture or no texture while you're utilizing with the oil paints. And you can kind of see the best way to do it is if I change my flow to not very much, or better yet, like my paint mix, you can see here that that creates a canvas-like texture. And if I wanted to turn that off, I could just say texture none. And then when I come in here, you can tell the difference between these two blues right here. I prefer to keep the texture on, the canvas texture. I just think it's so beautiful that you can mimic that. The last of our brush set is going to be the vector brushes. The first brush set is a pixel brush or a raster brush. And just to show you the difference in the pixel or raster brush, and let's use maybe, I've got, oops. So this is going to be our raster brush, and this is a brush that has a little bit more of a texture to it. So with the raster or pixel brushes, you can see that as I'm zooming in, you're getting a lot of pixelation, right? Like you can see those pixels and it is clear this is pixel art. If you prefer to work in, so let's just draw that like that. If you prefer to work in vector, you can see that as I'm zooming in, the difference is I can zoom in infinitely on this brush, and the lines are going to stay super crispy, super clean. So if you need work to be vectorized, you can utilize that here in Fresco, and you'll see up here that obviously that is raster. Now, one thing you'll notice, and we are going to get to layers, but it's worth mentioning over here, is the vector layer you can see is a vector by the little bullseye number that it has on it. And that coincides over here with the brush that also has the little bullseye on it. The pixel brush, which is this layer, sort of has almost like a checkerboard pattern to represent the pixels, which also connects perfectly with the pixel brush up here. And if we were just to show you guys to use a live brush, that's going to stay on your pixel layer because those are pixel brushes. So the cool thing with Fresco is you can interchangeably go from a pixel or raster layer to vector layer and work with it all in the same piece of art. But it will automatically segregate the layers between your pixel layer and your vector layer, which is super cool. Okay, moving on. We have the eraser, which I don't use the eraser a whole bunch. Let's get some better colors in here. Let's do maybe this orange. So with your eraser, it's going to default to whatever their default pixel erasers are, which isn't bad. But when you're working with something, sometimes you want to maintain, like this particular brush that I'm using, True Grit Texture Supply Co. Crispy Inker. That's one of my favorite brushes on here. And you'll see that it kind of has this texture to it, almost like a Sharpie or like a felt, some type of felt pen or something. And I really like that opposed to just like a clean line. Like for example, their hard round brush is just going to be a typical hard round. So let's say that I've created artwork with this hard round and I want to erase with the hard round. I just take my little touch modifier and double tap. And then you'll see up here in the left, it says erase with brush. So I'm now erasing with the current brush that I have been creating my artwork with. And let's say that I didn't have the, let's say that I had the crispy inker right? And I wanted to erase with that. You can see that as I'm erasing here on this edge right here, it looks identical to the opposite edge over here. So if you want to maintain texture, you double tap this little touch modifier and this thing floats around the screen so you can move this wherever you want. And then you're erasing with the current brush that you have. One thing I wanted to note, while you have pixel brushes, you have all these favorites that you can favorite. So let's say you like a certain lettering brush, like the chunk. You've got an option here for a star. You can just favorite that. And then anytime that you come into these pixel brushes and you hit favorites, you're going to see down here at the bottom, now I have my chunk brush. Another really cool feature with brushes that Fresco does is within your artwork, it creates a database and a library for all of the brushes that you've utilized in a session. And so for this particular session with pixel brushes, you can see that as I go over here to the recent, it's got a list of the pencil that we started out with, the hard round, and the True Grit Texture Supply Company Crispy Inker. Really, really cool. Moving down the line, we have the finger, which is a smudge tool. You can see that Fresco defaults this to just a graphite smudger. This is something that's really cool with the smudge tool. So if we go to smudge and we change our brush to, if we go to FX and we go to spatter 2, for example, if we have our really thick, juicy paint here, if we start to tap on our paint, look at what happens here. We can create actual indentations in our paint and texturize with this. So maybe let's go back to the oil. Let's make sure we're on oil here. Live brush. Yep, we're at the oil paint. And let's make this maybe, let's go with like this really pretty blue. Mix in some of that red, give it that like nice purple color. Okay, and then maybe we want to make it even bigger because we are just going for it. So we go back to smudge and spatter. Make this size pretty big and we just kind of tap in here. And you can just see this crazy cool spatter texture that can leave these almost indentations in your paint. So while you're smudging, you can smudge as I showed you with any type of like FX. But let's just say you want like a basic hard round opacity and you want to smudge with that. So you can come in here and just as you would smudge anything with a finger, you can smudge around and you can blend things. I'm just taking the pencil and just sort of twirling in a circle there to sort of blend this really good. But you can totally go crazy with this and your heart's desire and smudge and blend things as needed. Where this is really helpful is really any type of art you're doing, but especially like dry media, like charcoal. I always say that weird. Charcoal or pencils or something like that, and you want to smudge. Here, while we're here, let me just show you sketching, and let's just do coal pencil. And let's come in here and smudge. And you can sort of see how that looks. And then if we wanted to, let's do the coal pencil. And then let's smudge with an actual graphite, like dry media. Now you're getting a true, and that brush is a little bit large, so maybe we pull that back a little bit. But now you're getting a true smudging of pencil. So you can really go crazy with shading and values and things like that. So, you know, and that's just a smudge. This was just a smudge with something basic. Yeah, hard round opacity or soft round opacity, and that's how it smudged. So any brush that you do have on here, you can erase with that brush or you can smudge with that brush. And that takes your brush options and just doubles, triples, quadruples their abilities and how you can use them. It's really quite remarkable. Moving down, you have the transform tool, which is really useful. It automatically defaults to select your entire artwork or at least whatever is on your layer. So you can move it up and down by just dragging any of the corners. You can rotate as necessary. You can do minor bumps or movements over here with this almost secondary touch modifier that gives you sort of arrow keys to move up and down as you wish. And you have natural skew and perspective. So if you wanted to draw something on perspective or what have you, you can transform those things. And then over here, you've got a really cool liquefy tool. So this is cool. If you, first off, let me back out of the smudging really quickly. So if we wanted to go down here to liquefy, you've got warp, reconstruct, smooth, twirl, pucker, bloat, and push left. So if you wanted to warp something, you can just come in here and make this as funky as you want. And obviously your brush settings are down here, so you can make the size as big or as small as you'd like, and then adjust your pressure sensitivities and whatnot. And let's say you came in and warped something and you wanted to undo it. You can just reconstruct by just taking the reconstruct tool and brushing right back over what you just warped, and it puts it right back in place. There's also a smooth tool. There's a twirl tool, which is really cool. If you tap around this, it essentially just creates a whirlpool. So the center of your brush becomes like a whirlpool or like a tornado type of thing, and it just continues to keep spinning. And if you keep tapping, it just continues to twirl and twirl and twirl, which is really cool. Pucker is neat. Let's draw a smiley face really quickly. Oops. Just so that you can see like how this actually works. Liquidify, let's go to pucker. So if I just kept tapping on this smiley face, it's going to pucker him into a pucker face. And if we undid that, and let's say we wanted to come over here to bloat, it'll push him out and just sort of bubble him out and kind of give that like fisheye lens type of look, which is really cool. Okay, so I could spend, again, a lot of time just in those transform tools because this is a big program. And anyways, we're trying to not like be overwhelmed here because we're trying to get started for beginners. So let's kind of keep moving down the line here. So underneath so far we've gone over pixel brushes, live brushes, vector brushes, the erase tool, the smudge tool, the transform tool, and now we are moving to the lasso. If you're familiar with a lasso tool, you can come in here and rope off items, and either down here in the bottom, you can click erase to erase that. You can transform, so you can lasso something, pull it out, transform it around, kind of go to town with it. You can also tap, once you have that lassoed, tap over here on the layer and say copy selection. And let's say that you wanted to move this on a different layer, you just tap back and you say paste selection, and it automatically moves this over onto its own layer because you're copying and pasting. So it's keeping what you had originally there and obviously creating the new layer, which is really neat. You also have a magic wand tool where you can come in and change the color margin and tapping on certain items that you want to magic wand. And then you have a paint selection tool, which if you just wanted to paint over something to select it, you can do that. And then you have your standard rectangle, ellipse, polygon, etc. One thing that's really cool is, let's say that you're doing like really articulate work. You're having to really be finite with your selection, but then you accidentally, bump the screen or something and you lost what you had just spent like 5 minutes tracing. You can use this load last selection button, and it'll automatically load your last selection, which is very handy. Okay, so I'm going to create a new layer really quickly so we can demonstrate the paint bucket. So let's say that we had our smiley face again, and the paint bucket here is very simple. It's similar to Procreate, how you kind of drag and you drop, except with this, you actually utilize a tapping. So let's say that we want to turn this guy green. You literally just hit your paint bucket selection and you pick your color that you would like, and then you just tap the area. Now, if you'll notice when I tapped here again, the whole face went blue. So maybe I didn't want to do that. Maybe I only wanted to paint the inside. Well, you'll notice this little color margin button over here that pops up. So this, you can either turn all the way up and make everything within the selection painted, or all the way down. So let's show like a good example of that. Let's drag it really far down. And you can see, if I zoom in here really closely, if you look, let me get a different brush color here just to show you. If you look here along the edges, you can kind of see that white that's showing up. So you're not filling his face all the way. So if we really wanted to fill his face, we would go back to the paint bucket, we'd turn this color margin up, and then tap. And then if you zoom in, you can see, obviously it's pixelated because this is a pixel brush, but you can then see that we fully filled in the structure. So that's your paint bucket tool. We also have shapes over here, which I don't use a ton of, but cool things like boom and these pretty like leaves and, you know, comics and all different kinds of stuff like that. You can download a bunch of free shapes from Fresco that might be useful or helpful. I'm just not a big shape girl, but I mean, if that's you, knock yourself out. So then we have our text option. You have Fresco provides two different text options. They provide a horizontal type and a vertical type. And there's two ways that you can put this onto your screen. You can either tap and then drag, or you can, let me zoom in here. You can take your pencil and just drag like so, and then just, you know, keep moving things around until you're comfortable with it. Fresco also gives you the option here. You can move text around. You can come over here to your right side of your screen and change the type of font that you have. Make it more bold, you know, really go crazy with it. Change your alignment, make it all caps, lower caps. I mean, change your spacing. Like, you can do all types of fun stuff here with the text. So moving on to the eyedropper, you can tap this eyedropper. When you do, you'll see right here on this little floating screen, you have a solid circle, which is just going to be your single color. So I can come in here and grab that. Let's say let's put a couple colors on the board. Obviously I can come in here and just press and hold one finger, and if you notice, it will load that as my current color, which is pretty sweet. But then you also have this multi-color swatch here. So if you tap that, then what you can do is if you watch over here in the corner underneath the eyedropper, as I'm moving this around, let me zoom in a little. As I'm moving this around, you can see that it's changing what I'm picking up. And I can zoom in and out so that it'll totally change that. So let's say that like this is my selection, and then I want to come over here and use that. That's what my swatch is going to look like. So you can do some really cool and funky patterns here. Like let's get maybe like a blue, and then I don't know, let's just do a yellow here. Okay. So we've got all these colors chunked up here. Let's take our smudge tool and just kind of smudge them around a little bit and create this little twister effect. And then let's go back to our eyedropper, make sure that our multi-swatch is selected, zoom out a little bit until we can kind of see all the different colors showing up on our color grid. And then now we have a brush that we can color with. Hey, Or better yet, we change it to, let's say, hard round maybe. That's a good brush for multicolor. Hello. So you get to kind of create this really cool like 3D type of text, all from like we just made this. That's freaking incredible. Which we'll come back to that. So then last but not least, you have this picture button over here. So a few things that you can do here that are really cool. Let's say that you have a photo of maybe a piece of artwork that you really love, and you want to utilize that as a reference photo. And let's say, in my case, it's this. What I can do with this photograph is pull this off screen, and I can obviously make it as big or as small as I want. Let's say I want it really big, and move it off of my artboard. Once I hit done over here, you'll notice that this layer, this image layer, if I could kind of zoom in, you don't see anything on the layer, but if I turn over here in this corner, my eye off and on, it turns that image off and on. So as long as you keep this as an image layer, you can have this off your artboard as a reference as you're, you know, making doodles or whatever it is that you're doing with this particular piece of reference material. Let's say that we wanted this to be on the artboard. Maybe we were going to, this was a sketch and we wanted to like maybe we wanted to sketch this wolf or something. So you can come in here, tap the layer, the image layer. Okay, let me take a step back. Let's say that you wanted this to be within your artwork. You could just tap on the image and you can say convert to pixel layer. So you tap on your layer and say convert to pixel layer. Now you have the option if you want to erase something within the photo or select something in particular, you can do that. It's no longer an image that's like sitting on top of your art. So let's say that we wanted to trace this. You can come over here and turn down your layer opacity over here. And if that's not open, you just tap your layer and tap the sliders. And then this little plus button over here adds a new layer. And then you could, you could come in here with your black, and maybe you are using your crispy inker, and oh goodness golly, that's way too big. And maybe you are coming in and you are just tracing. That's a terrible tracing job, but you get the gist. Let's say that we wanted to make our little moon, and here's our little moon dude. Maybe we wanted to match the colors verbatim, so we turn back the opacity, we grab the color, remember just with holding our finger, we take our paint bucket and something's going on. Why? The color margin's at 0, but the whole screen is up. So the issue with that is I have not closed my lines here. So let's go back and maybe make these a little bit thicker, darker, what have you. And there we have our moon. Okay, so on these layers, let's say that we had a bunch of layers and we wanted to, maybe we had this little moon and this text, and we wanted to group these two things together. You can just take one layer, drag it on top of the other, and turn the layers off and on, lower their opacity. You can do whatever you want. But once you double tap into that layer group, you still have each individual layer. So you're not working in a deconstructive way. If I was to flatten those onto the same layer, which you can do by just saying merge down, now they're on the same layer. There's really, I mean, no point of them being necessarily in a layer group because it's just one layer. Okay, you can delete layers by just hitting delete layer group. So moving over on the left side of the screen, you have your layer stack right here, which hides and kind of is a drawer to tuck away your layers. Then underneath that, you have your layer properties. And this is where you can change your blend mode if you wanted to, you know, alternate that. You can change your layer opacity. Underneath that is going to be your precision. So that's your snapping and your grids and any kind of perspective grid that you can do in Fresco. And then beneath that is going to be comments. So back to the point of having collaborative work, if you wanted to make a comment on a particular layer, like, hey, we don't like the curvature of this O, or whatever little nitpicky thing, that's where that would go. And then underneath that, the box with the plus sign is just to create a new layer. The box with the arrow is a clipping layer. And so what that means is, let's say that we had all this crazy stuff underneath our hello, and we only wanted to affect the hello. We can come in here with our clipping layer, and maybe we wanted to add texture to this particular painting. So let's do maybe like ink. Let's do ink roller, and let's do black. So I can come in here, as long as this little box is pointing on top of the hello, I can come in and totally alter this hello. And it, even if I'm brushing, well, you can't see in the video, but if I'm brushing over the entire artboard, it's not going to affect anything down here besides the hello. Let's say I turn this clipping mask off. You'll notice that it covers the entire artboard. But if I clip it just to what's above, you can see that it's not covering the entire artboard. It's just covering the art. And so I can come in here and alter it as I need. I mean, that's way too big, first off, to like do any kind of cool texture. But let's say that I wanted to kind of have like a gritty type of texture situation there. I could do that. Make the hello look dirty. And then another really cool feature down here is this like biohazard looking multi-circle. If you click on that, you can create different adjustment layers. So let's say that we wanted to change maybe the hello here, and we just really wanted to check out the spectrum of what we could do here. You just slide your hues, your saturations, make it really ugly or make it kind of black and white. These are pretty incredible. And again, you can clip this just to the hello, or you can turn that off and make your entire artboard change colors, which is just super funky and super crazy. And then last but not least, you have these little layer actions, which you can also achieve if you tap on certain layers. Okay, so now let's look at motion. Let's pretend that we just want this little guy on his own little layer because we're going to do something special with him. So we're going to select him with the Lasso Tool. We're going to say copy selection and paste selection. And now we have him on his own little layer, okay? So maybe we'll hide everything else and we just have hello and we have our little buddy here. So as you'll notice, he's purple and green, but remember, that's because we have this hue that's changed, okay? So down here in the bottom right, you have two features. You have, first off, you have your ruler, which you can come in here and use as a ruler guide. That's a terrible brush to test that with. You can come in here and use this ruler guide, twist it around, you know, draw up against it. You can utilize different shapes. If you press and hold down on that, you'll open up like a circle where you can use this as a drawing guide for a perfect circle. And then if you needed to kind of move that or change that, you can do so. And to set your circle, you get the size that you want, and then you just hit this little box down here to remove the moving triggers on it. And there you go. It's pretty cool. And then to get rid of it, you just tap it again. But we want to mess with motion. So these three little circles with the arrow is what creates motion in Fresco. And we're going to animate or create motion for our little happy face here. So this is where Fresco, in my opinion, completely blows Procreate totally out of the water. So with this guy, you can add a bunch of different frames here and, you know, move him around with frame by frame animation. And the way we would do that would be, let's just duplicate him and let's transform him down a little bit. And then we'll duplicate this layer and transform him and move him down a little bit. And so then if we press play, you can see that he's moving up and down just like we drew him. But let's say that we don't want to do frame by frame animation because we have a lot going on and we really just want to animate this particular guy using motion paths. This is where Fresco really shines. So we have a motion path. Let's say we want him to fall from the sky. It's as easy as that. But wait, what if we want to have more of them fall from the sky? Okay, that's great, but we don't want it to look like a giant centipede, so maybe we scatter them. And maybe we don't want as many. We've decided we only just want a few. You can then turn on this grow and shrink, and you can make them sort of literally grow and shrink, either getting bigger and then smaller or smaller and then bigger. You can make them sway, which is really cool. And you can draw as many of these as you want. So let's say we wanted like multiples. Or let's say that we just wanted him to kind of hover. Can do like so, or have him going across the screen. It's pretty remarkable what you can do with motion in Fresco. And again, the options are just absolutely unlimited. Let's say we wanted to animate the hello with the motion path. Well, we just have it saying hello. Or we want it to just kind of flow in and out like this. So let's say at the end of this, you're a social media influencer and you want to share your work. So if you click on this top button up here, there's your collaboration if you wanted to collaborate. You can also come up here and change your artboard settings. You can, you know, flip, rotate, whatever. But let's say you wanted your social media influencer and you want to do a time-lapse export of your work. So you can come over here and you can drag this duration down to make it super fast, or drag it all the way up and do the full length, which is 36 seconds. But let's say we want 15 seconds. We're going to preview that. Fresco is going to generate a preview for you. And then we want to watch our really incredible time lapse of everything that we did. And you can just watch, which is pretty sweet. You also can come in here and do only export your motion, although we got rid of the motion, but let's bring it back in there if we wanted it. And so you could come in here, publish and export, and do a motion export and generate the frames for your motion and export like so. So there's tons of different settings you can utilize. Hopefully this gets you started in Fresco. I would love to see what you guys are creating. As you play around with the app and you start making some work, be sure to tag me if you're making anything on social media. I'd love to see your work and just cheer you on, because I think this is such an incredible program that I don't see a lot of people utilizing. And if they are, I'm at least not seeing it out on the interwebs. So have a blast. Hopefully you create something cool. All right. Thanks for watching.